All right, the show must go on. Couple of updates for you. First, the Secretary General is in St. Petersburg, as we mentioned. He spoke at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, and he said that the forum embodies a 21st century truth. Global challenges require global solutions. No country, no organization can do it alone, he said. We need political leaders, the business world, scientists, scholars, philanthropists, and civil society to join hands in addressing threats and pursuing common opportunities. He told the forum's participants that we need a global economy that works for all and creates opportunities for all, adding the 2030 agenda for the Sustainable Development points that way. He underscored that we must address the global climate emergency, that we are in a race against time, he warned, and we are losing that race. Yet global warming speeds up, political will is slowing down. The Secretary General also just a short while ago had a bilateral meeting with President Vladimir Putin of the Russian Federation, and he also met with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. We'll try to get you some readouts of those meetings, and the Secretary General is returning back to New York over the weekend. Turning to Sudan, I want to stress that our humanitarian colleagues tell us that their partners, that they and their partners are continuing to provide aid in Sudan, where 100 people are reported to have died and 800 others have been injured in violent clashes in Khartoum and other provinces. Most of the casualties were in Khartoum after a violent raid by security personnel on the 3rd of June. The Emergency Relief Coordinator, Mark Lowcock, has urged the Sudanese authorities to facilitate an independent investigation into the death and hold those responsible accountable. There's also been reports of looting in some areas, and on the 3rd and 5th of June, intercommunal clashes were also reported in East Darfur, leaving more than 50 people injured. In the coming weeks, the UN Population Fund and its partners will send a mobile team to provide reproductive health services to respond to gender-based violence in Khartoum. Also, the World Health Organization said today it is gravely concerned about the impact of the violence on people in need, as well as on health workers and medical facilities, noting that these actions violate international human rights law. Healthcare workers appear to have been targeted for helping the injured, with reports of rapes and female health workers, destruction of mobile health clinics to treat protesters, and looting of medical equipment. The full statement is online. I would add that WHO and its partners have been providing emergency kits, medicines, and supplies to 7 hospitals in Khartoum, Bari, and Omdurman. WHO says it plans to import 3,000 more surgical kits to cover all of Sudan and is supporting ambulance services and the transportation of medical staff and supplies. Yesterday, you will have seen that Najat Roshdi, the senior humanitarian advisor to the Secretary General's Special Envoy for Syria, issued a press release saying that 3 million people in Idlib need protection. She warned of a humanitarian catastrophe if the violence does not cease, adding that the attacks and fighting are also impacting civilians in government-held area. And turning to Libya, devastating floods that have swept through Gat in southwestern Libya have affected now 20,000 people, left them in need of humanitarian assistance, said the acting humanitarian coordinator Abdelrahman Gandour in a statement issued today. Over 2,500 people have been severely impacted, and some 500 people have been rescued, and 4 people, including 3 children, have reportedly died. The UN and our partners are providing clean water, food, medicines, and essential emergency items to affected populations. I want to flag also that UNICEF said today that an estimated 115 million boys and men around the world were married as children. In the first in-depth analysis of child grooms, UNICEF said that 23 million boys were married before the age of 15. According to data, the Central African Republic had the highest prevalence of child marriage among males, followed by Nicaragua and Madagascar. The new estimates bring the total number of child brides and child grooms to 765 million worldwide. Girls remain disproportionately affected, with 1 in 5 young women aged 20 to 24 married before their 18th birthday, comparing to 1 in 30 for men. The UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, and the UN Migration Agency, IOM, said today that the number of Venezuelans who have fled their country is now over 4 million. Worldwide, only Syrian refugees at 5.6 million surpass Venezuelans as the largest displaced population from their country. Eduardo Stein, the joint UNHCR-IOM Special Representative for Venezuelan refugees and migrants, said the figure highlights the urgent need to support host communities in receiving countries, adding that Latin America and the Caribbean countries cannot be expected to continue their support without international help. A humanitarian regional refugee migrant response plan was launched last December, targeting 2.2 million Venezuelans and 580,000 people in host communities in 16 countries. However, the plan is only 21% funded. Meanwhile, UNICEF tells us it has delivered 55 tons of health supplies since the beginning of the year. These supplies have been distributed to 25 hospitals, including antibiotics, malaria treatment, and midwifery kits, and those are in Venezuela. And today's International World Safety Day, World Food Safety Day. The theme is Food Safety, Everyone's Business, and invites people to find out more about how food is produced, stored, and handled and consumed. And tomorrow is World Oceans Day, the theme being Gender and the Ocean. It seeks to promote gender equality in ocean-related activities such as marine scientific research, fisheries, labor at sea, migration by sea, and human trafficking, as well as policymaking and management. I want to flag that on Monday, the Secretary General will be receiving the report of the high-level panel on digital cooperation, which he convened last year. The panel's co-chair, Melinda Gates, and Jack Ma will deliver the report at 10 a.m. in the Secretary General's office, and there will be a photo op there. And at 10:45, they will be having an online conversation with the Secretary General that will be visible on our webcast as well as social media platforms. And at noon, 3 of the panel members, Nikolai Astrup, the Minister of Digitalization of Norway, Vint Cerf, the Chief Internet Evangelist at Google. I didn't know there was a chief internet evangelist. And Nanjira Sambuli, the senior manager of the World Wide Web Foundation, will be here to answer your questions. And I want to say thank you to our friends in the Lao People's Democratic Republic for paying on their budget dues in full, bringing us up to 104 out of 193. Questions? James.
Is the Secretary-General planning to send his Under-Secretary-General, Rosemary DiCarlo, to the Middle East to speak to the government of Yemen? And what would this say, having a senior UN official having to go to mediate with the government of Yemen simply to get them to talk to the Special Envoy of Yemen? Does it mean that Mr. Griffiths' mission is becoming untenable?
I don't think Mr. Griffiths' mission is becoming untenable, but I have no official travel to confirm to you at this point. Yes, Masood, and then Evelyn, sorry.
Thank you, Stefan. Stefan, on situation in Palestine, Israeli-occupied territory. The Palestinian president has said that the American peace plan can go to hell. He's totally rejected if there was any such plan. Does the Secretary General have any position on that? And because Israel continues its expansion activities.
I would refer our position on the plan that we have not yet seen. I would refer to you to what Mr. Mladenov said in his last briefing to the Security Council. Evelyn.
Yes. The figure on Venezuelan refugees
And migrants, yes.
Migrants. Since when? What's the date that they...
Since, that's a good question. A bit more than a year ago. I'll get you the exact date.
Could you please?
Yes, ma'am.
And then who is smashing the health centers in Sudan? Is it the government?
It's not the protesters.
Because who has to speak to somebody? They
Well, I
can't
think
just say, "Stop
the
it."
government is ultimately responsible for the safety of its own citizens, and I think we were very clear in condemning the violence. I will get you a date. Yes, Masood.
Yes, on the situation in the occupied Indian Kashmir, the humanitarian situation continues to grow worse. Does the Secretary General have any opinion? Will he be ever talking to the Indian and Pakistani Prime Ministers?
Nothing has changed in our position on this. Mr. Bays.
Yeah, just to follow up on the Middle East peace process, ask the question again. Has the special envoy, Mr. Mladenov, received any invitation to the economic conference in Bahrain. One assumes, I mean, you would know by now, UNSO is a big office. He has lots of people. He has lots of contacts with the US. I'm sure he can ask, am I getting an invitation? And what is the UN's position on that conference? Whether you have an invitation or not, are you planning to attend?
I think we should have a bit more clarity by next week as to the UN representation.
You have received an invitation.
We should have a bit more clarity by next week as to the UN representation. Thank you.